I know Joe wants to jump in, but just let me ask this one question because you asked an interesting question. You said what does he stand for? What does Joe Biden stand for? The answer might be normalcy, and normalcy in this context is change. I mean, you know, we've talked on the show for years about the toggling back and forth. Like, is the reaction to Donald Trump going to be something that is extreme or back to some sort of establishment centrism? And it seems like many voters in the last week have been saying, you know what? Time-tested guy, 8 years as vice president, normal. I mean, we know all the gaffes and everything else, but normalcy right now represents kind of change.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, let me get Joe in. Go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, Mr. Mayor, you had said when it's a one-on-one race, that Bernie Sanders and the voters will get a better look at things like Joe Biden's vote for the Iraq War in 2003. The same holds true, of course, for Bernie Sanders. They can see that this is a guy that ran for office, was defeated by the NRA, and so then he made peace with NRA. In fact, became an aggressive supporter of the NRA. In fact, voted to shield gun manufacturers from liability. He also voted for the crime bill, a crime bill that so many civil rights groups voted against. That cuts both ways, does it not?
Oh, Joe, unquestionably. And but I'll take that comparison any day of the week. If you say Bernie Sanders, there's a couple of issues he's been the first to say he needs to explain to people why he made votes at a certain time versus Joe Biden, who I think has essentially an endless record of those kind of votes and statements that people are going to ask more and more tough questions about. But to the previous point, respectfully, I don't think people are looking for normalcy. I think they want to stop the madness. Democrats want to stop the madness of what we've gone through with Donald Trump. But let's go back to African-American voters, young voters, Latino voters, progressive voters. They're not trying to get back to the world before Trump, the day before Trump, because it was such a wonderful world and there was so much fairness and equality in America. I want to be really careful on this. Again, only 3 people can be president now. Now, if you're a Democrat, that means 2 people to choose between. If you're one of those voters who needs change in your life, who is not having a great experience for so many of them in America, want to see real change, how is Joe Biden going to convince you he will change things? Of course he'll be better than Trump, and he's a very good, decent human being. But where is his vision of change? Joe Biden has spent a lifetime in the status quo. And I think this is a vulnerability. And, Joe, I'm going to invoke one of your heroes. Joe Biden can't be the outsider candidate. He can't be the candidate who says, I'm going to disrupt what's broken. Donald Trump did that very effectively in 2016, as did Barack Obama in 2008, as did Ronald Reagan in 1980. The outsider who can disrupt a broken status quo is in a strong position. My fear is Joe Biden up against Donald Trump. Joe Biden looks like the candidate of the status quo, and that in some ways empowers Donald Trump.
I've got to say, from everybody I've talked to, Democrats, Republicans, independents alike, there is a sense of exhaustion that has set in over this country because of 3.5 years of absolute chaos from Donald Trump. There are a lot of people who think change back to normalcy, as it was under Barack Obama, would be a pretty damn good place to start. And there are a lot of things that voters obviously see in Bernie Sanders that they don't find comforting. And I am curious, following up on what Willie asked, why is it that Bernie Sanders does so poorly among black voters? Why is it that he spent the past 4 years trying to expand that base of support among black voters, and yet things have only gotten worse for him?
Look, I think for every candidate, you have to constantly improve your game and your work. I think.
Why hasn't he? He has 40. He's had 4 years. He didn't even ask Jim Clyburn for his support.
Joe, I want to put that aside because I think it was well known where Jim Clyburn was going. But let's be clear about this.
No, it wasn't. Jim Clyburn, actually, I just need to be accurate here. Jim Clyburn, the week before he made his endorsement, still wasn't sure which direction he was going.
But let's go to this point. You could say the same of Bernie Sanders coming out of 2016 about the Latino vote, put a huge amount of focus and energy, absolutely blew the doors off the Latino vote in Texas and California, which bluntly.
So
and
why don't black voters
Joe, I want to
trust
answer, but
him?
let me get this point.
I've already heard you talking about Hispanics, and that's very impressive. We need to figure out, if you want your candidate to win, why black voters don't trust Bernie Sanders.
I think Bernie Sanders, all of us who support him, have to go out into the community, including right here, New York primaries coming up, 2 million African Americans in my city. It's my job and everyone else's job to go out in the community and gain that kind of respect for Bernie and connection to Bernie that we need, and I think we can do it. But the reason I go to the Latino parallel is that was from nowhere in 2016 to stunning result in 2020. He obviously has the capacity to expand his coalition. He can say to people that he has a vision of change that they need in their lives. That's what he has to do. We all have to do effectively. I don't think it's, look, again, it's a one-on-one race is a different discussion.
Mr. Mayor, we need to move it. We've got a lot of people here, so forgive me for cutting you off. People go, what do you cut him off? Because I got Alex yelling in my ear, and everybody wants to talk to you. That's why I cut people off.
Joe, you can cut me off anytime, brother.
You can cut me off as well. Karine. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.